Welcome to Team Talk. We're delighted to have Nick Reilly, Director of Sustainable X, with us today. He's going to give us a fresh perspective on people challenges. We're going to explore how sustainable practices could truly help you unlock new opportunities for your business. I'm expecting a bit of a fresh perspective on people challenges today. I guess before we dive into that, though, Nick, first of all, welcome. Do you want to just give people just a little bit of background about what Sustainable X is for anyone that doesn't know?
Absolutely, and thanks, James, for the opportunity to talk. So Sustainable X, we're all about helping people progress their sustainability. And sustainability, in terms of the definition that we tend to use, we anchor it in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but there's also a lovely definition from Harvard Business School, which is to do well from doing good. So
I love how succinct that is. Do well from doing good.
And the good is environmental impacts, improving them, and social impacts, improving them. You could add on in there economic impacts as well. And they all relate to the people side of things. But wherever an organization is, we really help them accelerate and proactively improve those impacts. And people come to us for lots of different reasons, but it tends to be an external pressure brings sustainability to the top of their to-do list, because it's a thing people aspire to do and would like to do, but don't quite get round to until something pushes them over the edge.
That's often the way in life.
Yes.
Indeed. So I think we're going to really focus down on the people side to it today. I mean, there is a breadth to sustainability or ESG or CSR or whatever people prefer to label this quite broad subject. But I've deliberately tried to focus on this today for the benefit of leaders, because I find, and actually you reminded me of this, Nick, when we met a couple of weeks ago, that it's the people side of it that is less thought about amongst the business community.
Yeah, so absolutely, and as we touched on with the introduction, the social impacts are a really important part of the agenda. But with every organization we work with, we tend to start off with the business case, the why bother trying to improve these impacts? You know, what benefit is it to the business? Because there tends to be a cynic in the mix somewhere. It might be a cynic on the board, it might be someone in the management team, might be lots of people in the management team. So why are you bothered? And the people aspect of that is that they want to, your employees and potential employees typically want to work for an organization that's got good ethics and is making a positive difference. And all the evidence is that people will shift and move organizations to someone who has a more positive purpose or has a good ethics if they've got the choice. Money comes into play, so it tends to be if it's the same money and one organization is more ethical than another, they're likely to go for that organization. And when they look at the business, what evidence is there that they are doing the right thing? They have got those ethics, both environmentally and socially. And the social aspect, there's many elements to it. When you look at different frameworks that are out there, probably if you took the UN Sustainable Development Goals, about a third of that agenda is specifically people related.
Okay, do you want to give us a bit of an insight into the bits that are on it?
So the Sustainable Development Goals have been around since 2015, and the goals are targeted towards 2030. That's an international piece, and unashamedly, a lot of it is leveling up countries, developing countries, so that they have similar opportunities. But it's all, as a framework, it's applicable to you if you're just based in the UK as well. And within that framework, about a third of them are environmental, a third social, and a third sort of governance, economics. And just typically, so reducing poverty, reducing hunger, gender equality, good health and well-being, economic growth touches on, and there's education and economic growth in the mix of things as well in there. And diversity inclusion, there's two goals. There's the gender equality and actually an inequalities goal as well. So there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of sub goals. And when you consider them from a business perspective, absolutely relevant. And there are lots of other frameworks out there, and the social and people aspect of it, really, really important aspects of it. Investors care what you're doing with the people, because you're not a sustainable organization if you're not going to develop and keep and retain the best talent.
Excellent. Can I just pick you up on that kind of that gender diversity piece? Because I think there's a hidden opportunity for there, isn't there, in terms of opening up some talent pools.
Yes, so and there's many aspects of it, but an example of organizations who've unlocked some value by thinking, hey, let's look at the gender piece. And there's a lot of talent in terms of working parents, and a lot of those working parents are female, and they're almost obstructed from career development or returning to work at the right level. And some organizations, some of our clients who have talent shortages, have looked at this and thought, well, what can we do to unlock opportunities to bring that talent in, which helps fill our skills gap, but also as a really valuable social contribution to helping these people who want to go back to work get good, meaningful, well-paid work. And just by really looking in anger at the working patterns and job shares, and schools do that really well as well, but industry's not so good at it.
Yeah.
They've unlocked that potential, and where they've had a real problem with underrepresentation from women in the workforce, that really has moved the dial.
I love that example, because it's creating a sort of triple win, isn't it? All around. It's not just kind of ticks on a document for a policy, which I know you're not about. It's helping society, it's helping people, and ultimately it's helping the business as well.
Yeah, and most of the best things that happen are anchored in a positive business benefit, because people do it properly. Then they put the resources in it. If you're doing it as a tick box, you're probably going to do it pretty superficially. If it's solving a business problem, as in a skills shortage or a talent gap, well, you're probably going to put some oomph behind it and make a difference. And that's we tend to come back to. There's so many things you can do on this agenda. If it falls into the sort of Venn diagram of, it's going to solve a business challenge, improve a social impact or an environmental impact, or both, then that's the sweet spot. Those are the things you should do first, and you start to build momentum.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Because actually, if you started to look at it and tried to do everything on there, it's a huge task, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's a big ask, and people tend to be quite ambitious, but that can derail. I mean, the change management is a whole different piece, but you've got to. This is, if you haven't done it before, it's over and above the day job. It's over and above business as usual. So it is important to prioritize which impacts are most significant, or in that sort of sweet spot, and then apply some resources to it. But back on the people side of that, because these are really great positive impact projects, improvement projects, you unlock a lot of discretionary effort from people, and you get enthusiasm that most organizations are quite shocked at. We worked with one organization, and we were working with the MD. I'm not sure what we can do. I'll do a bit of a survey to see who wants to get involved in it. And they had about 60 employees, and over 40 of the employees said, yeah, I want to be part of that.
Wow.
And he then say,
Fantastic.
oh, hang on a minute. And they was quite, just amazed by the enthusiasm for it. And if you can get that engine going, how powerful is that for your business?
It sounds like that particular example, they were quite surprised by the reaction they got.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100% it was. Yeah, it was a very positive surprise.
Excellent. Is there any other ways that it can help unlock that? Because I think it's quite a big thing. I'll talk about it to quite a lot of people now. Is that that discretion?
Yeah.
What you choose to bring. You have to turn up to work generally at a certain time and deliver a certain amount. But beyond that, it's up to you as to what you bring. Now,
Yeah.
part of
Well,
that's your responsibility, and part of that as a leader you can engender and support and motivate.
I think, and you can create the opportunities. So it's the engagement piece is what we're talking around, but the agenda, the lens of sustainability opens up potential projects that people can put their hand and be part of. But part of the people agenda within sustainability is how are you developing your workforce? Because if you create talent and build talent and grow talent, even if they leave you, you're supporting economic growth, you're supporting businesses to get better and hopefully create more employment, and it's a virtuous circle. But everybody can't be involved, and there's not necessarily the opportunities for people to develop those leadership skills, to develop those management skills. Some of these projects are fantastic vehicles to give people that opportunity to develop and get some experience and strut their stuff almost. And it's a really powerful motivational tool that people are getting career development on meaningful projects. So that is again, that's this sort of double whammy benefit of you're getting career development, you're getting experience development, you're getting that personal development piece at the same time as contributing to improving the organizational impact. So
Excellent.
again,
And it may, I don't know if other people realize this, but I guess there are probably people out there who are doing a lot of these good things already in terms of developing their people, but not really realizing that it's part of an overall sustainable business world agenda. Business probably too small a word.
100%. And not nearly every client we go into, people think sustainability, environmental.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there hasn't been enough education around what the whole agenda is, and most of our clients are shocked from some aspect or another that that's part of the agenda, and really pleasantly surprised. But hey, we're pretty good at some of this.
Yeah.
We've got some good stories to tell, and we've got some good news to tell. Lots to work at too. But hey, we're not starting from nothing. We're in a good spot, and we've got some good news to put out there. And again, that gets the ball rolling. It's a little bit of a pat on the back to say, hey, good organization. And we tend to come back to that good business is sustainable. Good business practice is good sustainability practice often.
Yeah.
So just get that helps. You're not starting from nothing. The ball is already rolling, and you can build on the things you've already done. I mean, the investors and people agenda, fantastic. If you're doing investors and people, you're going to be generating a lot of evidence to show how sustainable you are as an organization from a people perspective. So there's
if
lots
you're a
to do.
service provider that's quite people heavy in what it delivers, and you're not actually making or manufacturing anything, then this is going to be a bigger part of your sustainability agenda.
Yes, absolutely. Often your business model defines how much environmental impact you have,
Yeah.
and it can be relatively limited. And if you genuinely look at, well, where do we have the big impact here? The bigger impact is on the people side of the fence. So putting more energy into that is logical because you're getting more bang for your buck. Whereas if you're a large, say you're a large accounting practices and you think, right, environmental, I'm going to save water, I'm going to recycle all our paper. Environmentally, it's good and you should, but actually from an impact perspective compared to, say, a construction company or someone else, it's pretty skinny. Whereas if you can move the dial with all your people and encourage your people to move the dial with all your accountancy practice customers, that could be a pretty big impact.
Yeah.
And it's that bang for the buck that's important.
And when we're talking training and development and learning, just for clarity, we're not just talking about green skills per se. That's across the board, isn't it? In terms of soft skills, leadership skills, all these important things.
It's that people development that fuels economic growth, which benefits the people personally in terms of their wealth and their ability to spend taxes, sorry, not to spend taxes, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
But to pay taxes
I know what you mean.
and put money into the local economy. So that's all going into the economic growth rate. And a lot of organizations, when they say, well, which impacts will you do? Goal 8, which is this sort of economic development aspect of sustainability. Well, everybody's doing that because you're employing people.
Absolutely.
But to
Yeah,
do it well, you should be employing and developing, and if you've got scope as a business, then hopefully growing and growing your own talent and bringing people with less opportunity into the organization. And that is another aspect of, as you get down that social path, okay, what are you doing in your community to help them, to help people who might be disadvantaged perhaps, which again is another talent pool that you could be fishing in. And if you do it well, you can be bringing people through. And there are some lovely stories of people who've gone into a disadvantaged group of people and put an initiative in place, and they've come through and become fantastic employees or fantastic
I'm
people for someone
glad to
else.
hear it. Yeah.
So, in a good example, as a recruitment business, I won't name, and this was one of our very first clients actually, and they were working with a local authority, and they committed to a scheme to help homeless people get into work.
Right.
And so one of the challenges the homeless people, they don't have an address, they struggle to get a bank account, so all those barriers were removed. They gave them the training to be able to go on a construction site, and some of those guys have become really cherished resources within the organization or within their client organization because they're good people. They've had some hard knocks.
Yeah, and I guess in this, of course, we want to help those people, but I guess in the environment that we operate today, unemployment is very very low, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need to. I guess there's a genuine business need to make sure that take advantage of all of these opportunities and create
Yeah.
more opportunities that are less obvious.
And there's a business flip side to it, which that is genuine social value that's being created. And in lots of tenders and contracts, customers are looking for you to demonstrate social value. And again, it's win-win because you're creating resource for yourself, which is positive, but you're also creating the social value and you're building the client relationships and you're creating a social value engine if you set it up right. So again, there's lots of double whammies.
And it's pretty significant, isn't it? The chunk, particularly I think, particularly amongst like local authorities and stuff, the weighting they give to this is quite chunky now, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've this construction sector client I was speaking to yesterday, and they've a tender coming up, and the weighting on this is 30%.
Yeah, okay.
It's with the housing association, and that housing association sector more and more is generally putting a bigger weighting than other sectors. But I would say for most tenders we're bumping into, it's at least 10%, and we're seeing more and more with a higher weighting on it.
Okay, so what people can tap into winning some of those tenders with stuff that they didn't necessarily think is obvious sustainable stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I'm assuming there's a benefit the other way, because if being sustainable is more attractive to people now in terms of joining a business, does it keep people in the business longer?
Yeah. So we work with a bank up north, and they've really excellent. They're off and running there, and they've got their own sustainability people now doing fantastic things. They got a bit of a challenge. People aren't leaving, and there's almost there's the concept that hey, it's healthy to have a bit of churn.
Yeah.
So and almost they're quite sophisticated with it. They're moving on to the place of almost encouraging some people to go to saying, hey, you could do with moving on from a career development perspective, and we're not throwing you out, but do look, and then when we have the right opportunity for you, come back.
Very, very
What
interesting. Yeah.
fantastic conversations to be having.
Yeah.
But all around there, so they really engaged with it, and their business case for engaging with it was there was quite a strong ethical piece, and they're quite it's a challenge about, so they're quite young, but it was the war for talent. They wanted to get the best people in. And how do we get the best people in? And in that space, right, we're going to hang our hat on being a really genuinely sustainable business. And they're doing really good things, and their people love it. And it's evident in the turnover stats. And also from a recruitment perspective, they're knocking the door down to come and work for them.
Yeah, so you're at a massive advantage now. Is that
Yeah.
gonna? I don't know where we are on the curve, but almost I see it potentially that now you're probably still at an advantage if you're doing some of those things where other people are not. Somewhere down the line, again, I'm not the expert. Legislation's probably going to catch up, and more of this will be mandatory. Where do you think we are? I know you can't predict it, Nick, but where do you think we are on the curve? What's your
Yeah,
advice?
so totally agree, and it's legislation light at the minute. So most of this agenda is driven from customer demand in the business to business side of
Okay, yeah,
organizations. So anyone who's a listed business tends to be on a framework, or they might have a ratings agency that's looking at their environmental and social and governance credentials. So they tend to use some of the more sophisticated measurement frameworks, which absolutely ask them questions on all these people aspects. How do you
yeah.
develop your people? How do you look after their health and well-being? How do you educate them? That's all in their agenda. So they pass that on through their supply chain, and
Okay, yeah.
and this runs through. So it's that pressure rather than the legislation that's driven it so far. But the Sustainable Development Goals I keep banging on about, we're signed to it along with 193, 192 other member states of the UN saying, hey, we want to achieve these goals. So at some stage, you expect legislation to kick in, and it has through things like modern slave labour, which is a big deal now. That's all come from this agenda and the UN pressure to try and make it happen. So we expect more will come, but
Okay.
actually the ball's already rolling itself.
Yeah,
So
and I get what you mean. So it trickles down the line. So
yeah,
it's going to impact some smaller SME businesses that
yeah.
probably haven't got the same level of resource of some larger companies to do all of this. What
Yes.
advice would you give them?
Well, back to it's good business, and also if you build it in early, it's a lot easier than retrofitting it when you're bigger. But there's an acknowledgement from most of these organisations that if you're very small, you're not going to be able to move the dial. So you take diversity and inclusion, for
Yeah,
instance, if you're a four-person organization or a 10-person organization, and you have three female employees and one goes, I mean, it's a massive hit on that statistic. But these organizations aren't daft. They recognize that. They
yes.
just want people to understand and be trying to do positive things. So it's number one, understand what your impacts are and where you can move dials. And if it's positively benefiting your business, crack on. Um, and other things you might be compelled to do. Um, but if it's not adding a lot of business value, then don't put your big energy there. And in terms of that level playing, it still is a competitive advantage. And we think it will continue to be a competitive advantage because there's always been good businesses and not so good businesses in any marketplace.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
back to the original point of sustainability is just good business. Some people do business well and some don't. Some will do sustainability well and some won't. From the people side of things, millennials care. Well, millennials are in the mid-40s now. Younger people care even more. We had a client yesterday and that a graduate in there totally cares. Went to work for that client because in their sector they're unusual in being a B Corp. And she joined them because they're a B Corp. So absolutely they care. And they're really marketed to people and they know when they're being bluffed. They don't buy
Yeah,
into the greenwashing.
yeah,
So if
yeah.
people aren't genuinely doing it, they're going to see it. And also your customers are going to see it too. And the customer piece is increasing. Their understanding is increasing. They know what greenwashing looks like. So people who are blagging it won't get the business of the people who care.
Yeah, and it's almost just good business if you're considering the three P's, aren't you, in terms of profit, people, and planet. If you've got
Yeah,
those things in mind, as much as you can, as your business allows,
yeah,
and that's going to enable great conversations up your supply chain, isn't it? Potentially.
yeah. Yeah, and there's degrees of sophistication as you go, and everybody that's in the space accepts and recognizes that, hey, the two-man band can really do very little, but they can understand it. The 10-man band, well, actually, there's bits and pieces they can do, and a lot of these organizations, they do great things in their community. They do great things with their people. They're really flexible with their people. They're adding a lot of value in there, and it's almost recognizing that and giving themselves a little pat on the back on it. But if they're going to scale, then actually they can put some building blocks in place that will really help that. And they can talk about it in a way that will attract good people to help that scaling.
Yeah, so you almost need to start thinking about it now and what elements are going to be core to your business proposition going
Yeah.
forward.
Which brings you almost right back, and it is in the agenda, is what is your purpose and what are your valued behaviors? Is sustainability a part of that? And it doesn't need to be overtly sustainability is part of our purpose, but it can be. We really care about developing our people, or we really care about our environmental impact, or we really care about what we do in our community. Whatever it is, it's kind of so what are the impacts of what your organization do? And if you can build it into your purpose, well, it'll stay there.
Absolutely. And clearly, employees are asking questions. Are there any questions on the people side that are coming from, customers or supply chain?
You get from the customer side of things, you get people who are looking for demonstrably sustainable suppliers. And it's part of their piece. And I touched on the B Corp piece. B Corps like to buy from other B Corps, a sort of little virtuous club and clique in there. But for all organizations, I talked about that investor piece. They ask people, have you assessed your supply chain and what proportion of your supply chain have you assessed? And so those people want to be able to say, yeah, I am buying from, so 80% of my supply chain by value or 80% of my supply chain by number or whatever the percentage is, has been environmentally screened, has been socially screened and are doing positive things.
Okay. So have you got then a choice as a business as to which levers you pull to meet the relevant criteria then for up your supply chain?
Yes, and again, there's the recognition of size, and there are lots of frameworks out there. There's something called CDP, which used to be the Carbon Disclosure Project, and it's an assessment scheme that puts people through, well, what are your environmental impacts, what are your impacts on supply chain and things like forestry and water, etc. And they have an SME questionnaire, which is
Okay.
very much a subset of the bigger full questionnaire that the big corporates would have to do. So some people will be asking organizations to go through a third-party assessment scheme. And right now, it's not that judgy. It's just, where are you?
You're right. Good.
And where are you going? And it's okay to say, well, I haven't really started on this one, but I've done this. As long as you're progressing along the journey and you understand it's very cliche, everyone says journey, don't they? As long as you're making progress and you know what your impacts are, good.
Excellent.
Yeah. And you've got to have a competitive business model. You can't compromise yourself so that you're uncompetitive or you go out of business and you're no good to anyone. So, and customers recognize that as well.
Absolutely. And is there in terms of that SME questionnaire, is that something anyone could access if they want to sort of get a gauge of how they are?
If you want to do yourselves out of business here, but if you want to self-research what sustainability is and what people are asking and what you need to do, it's all there.
Yeah.
There's most of these frameworks. If you in the environmental side, you look at science-based targets, the sustainable development goals. There's umpteen frameworks, and most of them are freely available to download. So you can pick up the people questions of some of these frameworks really easily and start to get your head around the sort of things that people are expecting. And you'd be pleasantly surprised by what you're already doing in most cases.
And this may sound a bit obvious, but I guess isn't part of sustainability? Do you need to consider your succession planning within the business? Are the people that
Yeah.
keep the business going?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And a big part of the people bit again is your people are what's going to sustain the organization. So if you're not taking care of those things and looking at the single points of failure and looking at succession, then you're probably not that strong a business. And
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
question mark in the mind of investors. There's a question mark in the mind of customers. Of, well, hang on a minute, are they going to be around?
It's really weird because as you describe it, then in my head I'm thinking, well, this is just how we do business now. It's not. I don't want to put you out of business either, Nick, but it's not about
Yes.
sustainability. This is just the way that we will do business and have to do business ongoing. Surely.
Yeah, It's back to good sustainability is good business. It's pretty simple stuff. And organizations we go into that are really good businesses but haven't looked at it from the sustainability lens, they're already 60-70% of the way there on all the things they could be doing.
Yeah, yeah. Really, really good. Any other advice that you would give to leaders on this
So
whole
just
subject?
with all of them, just get started. It doesn't matter how much you do, whether it's a lot or a little, but get started and start to understand the sustainability lens. People get the environmental bit, but get your head around the people bit because it's as important. You won't achieve any of the environmental bits if you don't get the people bit right.
Okay, you've got to have, so that's vital. Any books or resources that you'd recommend to people on that?
Ooh, there's the UN is a fantastic source of resource, and we tend to point people towards the Sustainable Development Goals as a kind of easy way to start. There's 17 of them. They're quite pictorial. They're
Yep.
easy for people to digest. So that would always be our starting place. It's good to look at a framework, and there are umpteen out there, but to look at a framework because it just takes you through it in a systematic, structured way. At the more sophisticated end of the spectrum, there's some European thing. There's a new one out which is the CSRD,
Okay.
and if you Google CSRD, that's quite a sophisticated framework if you want to go at the higher end of the spectrum.
And then I guess anyone else, because it is quite a complex area. This, and we've only people is, as you said, only about a third of that aspect overall. A vital part, as you've made really clear today. But if people want to engage with you, how do they get in touch with you, Nick?
Yeah, I should have said it was resource. Follow us on LinkedIn or do whatever. But yeah, the website sustainablex.co.uk, and yeah, just get in touch. We have conversations with people all the time that aren't ever going to go anywhere on the work front, but we're quite enthusiastic about the subject. So we're always keen to have a chat if people want to start moving. Happy to have a conversation.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for sharing that real fresh perspective. Hopefully, we've opened some people's eyes of just how vital people are in this whole sustainable piece, and people can go away and I think your words would just take some action, just make the first step. So we'll share some of those resources with people that they can use. We'll share your links. So let's hope pick what first step you want to make and take it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
And
indeed, Nick, for joining us.
thank you for the opportunity. And just to illustrate it in action, in terms of we have to practice what we preach. So we look at our impacts as an organization, and one of the big impacts we can have is on education around what sustainability is and what sustainable development is. And that's specifically a target within the UN Sustainable Development Goals on the
Okay.
goal for education. So what you're doing here, in terms of you're doing it, hopefully we're doing it, and there we are. There's a progression of sorts.
Yeah, well, personally, I was. This is very personal, but I was delighted when I caught up with you and had a conversation the other way, because it really stressed to me that as somebody who was focused on people development, and personally keen on on sustainability, that the work I do can have actually quite a big role in delivering sustainability and supporting companies in that direction. So yeah, I was delighted when we had that chat a couple of weeks ago, Nick.
100%. It's unusual for me to delight anyone, so I'm very happy.
Well, you did. Well done. That's a perfect place for us to close. Thank you very much indeed, Nick.
Thanks, James.
Cheers.